morning. Good morning and welcome to Edsel Ford High School. I am honored to be standing in front of all of you today to commemorate this prestigious occasion. Let me begin by introducing the color guard who will lead us in the presentation of the colors. From the Dearborn Detachment 152 Marine Corps League, please welcome the color guard.
Color guard, halt! Haste! Forward, march! Color guard, halt! Color guard, present arms!
Please rise.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the heaven's fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Color guard, salute, shoulder, arms. Right, haste. Forward, march. Color guard, halt. Color guard, post guard. Color guard, forward, march.
Thank you to the Dearborn Detachment 152 Marine Corps Leagues, Master Sergeant Philip S. Smith, USMC Retired Detachment Commandant, Mr. Eugene Simanki, current Color Commander, Mr. Joseph Charles Bernard Jr., retired U.S. Marine Corps and Edsel Ford alumni, class of '57, Mr. Rick Nouvet, current commander of the DAWVC, Mr. John Duff, Mr. Rick Dobson, Mr. James Vandal, Mr. Keenan Maples, and Mr. Dan Durson. Thank you again. I would like to now acknowledge some special guests in attendance here today. Would all representatives from all veteran organizations please stand and be recognized for the sacrifices you have made for our great nation? Please rise. Thank you. I would also like to recognize our school members here in attendance today, Ms. Mary Petchlikoff and Mr. James Thorpe. Welcome. Welcome, Dearborn Public Schools Superintendent Dr. Glenn Maleko, Executive Director of the Edsel Ford Feeder Track, Ms. Limi Soror, Director of Communication, Mr. David Mustinen. Thank you to Ms. Lisa Lark, former teacher and Edsel Ford graduate, for her contributions towards recognizing the sacrifices of Michigan veterans. Welcome. I would also like to welcome Ken Paris, Dearborn City Council. A special thank you to our feature speaker, Dearborn Fire Chief Joseph Murray. I would also like to thank Mr. Kelm and the choir for that beautiful the way they sung national anthem, as well as the performance later, Ms. Broekhuizen. I have to also thank all of our volunteer school band trumpeteers, the Dearborn Public School video production crew, and any other media members present here today. Thank you. Thank you to the Edsel Ford Social Studies Department who continue to put this presentation, and a special thank you to the Social Studies Department Chair, Ms. Caitlin Gallagher, U.S. History teacher. Thank you, Ms. Gallagher. Thank you, Mr. Whalen, AP U.S. History teacher, Mr. Dallas, AP Psychology teacher, as well, for helping us today. We thank you all for your assistance in organizing and for involving our students today. Thank you to the Edsel Ford office manager, Ms. Khaloud Faraj, for assisting with this event as well. A special thank you goes to those family members and friends of the 23 former Edsel Ford students that we are honoring here today. If you are in attendance, please stand and be acknowledged. It is my distinct honor and privilege to be standing in front of you all today to pay tribute and to honor the former Edsel Ford students who sacrificed their lives. I am Rima Hassan, the proud principal at Edsel Ford High School, and I'm humbled to be a part of this commemoration. Memorial Day is the day to commemorate the men and women who have given their lives for the service of their country. We are here today to honor our heroes, their achievements, their valor, and their commitment to uphold the American values that we are fortunate to have today. The purpose of this ceremony is to honor our past, as well as educate our future generations. I would like to now acknowledge the refurbishing of the plaque that resides outside of this very auditorium doors. Thank you to the class of 1968, who a few years ago refurbished to honor the 23 Edsel Ford students appropriately. The plaque is just above the table where the roses will be placed later in the ceremony. The 23 Edsel Ford students gave their lives in service to our country. Like many who take on the feat of serving, they all demonstrated pride, love, honor, courage, perseverance, and loyalty to their country. Today, we attempt to define who our fallen heroes are, and we attempt to learn from the values they held. As we think back to the 23 Edsel Ford students who sacrificed their lives for us today, it is important to also remember that we need to stand up and educate ourselves about what it truly means to serve. Let us note that not all or not everyone in this world has these freedoms that we as Americans are privileged to have. We are thankful to those who gave that ultimate sacrifice. I would like to now welcome to the podium our MC for today, a student in Mr. Whalen's AP U.S. History class, Callum Karsadian.
Hello, my name is Callum. I'm a 10th grade student here at Edsel Ford. From 1954 through 1975, America was either indirectly or directly involved in war with the country of Vietnam. Dearborn lost the most people per capita out of any city in the United States, and Edsel Ford lost the most students. One of the main arguments for going to war was to stop communism. The war impacted the lives of almost 3 million men and women directly through service, but it also impacted America in many different ways. I am a little younger than those men, and I can't imagine the struggle they face leaving their families, jobs, and their home, Dearborn. But I know we must never forget their sacrifice and honor their memory by never taking our freedom for granted. We gather today to show respect and for their sacrifice, pay tribute to their service. Thank you, and now I'd like to introduce to the podium the Superintendent of Dearborn Public Schools, Dr. Maleko.
Good morning, everyone. I'm happy that we're able to have ceremonies at all three of the high schools. This is the last one for the week. We were at Dearborn High, Fordson, and I know this is the longest tradition, and I know I always look forward to Ms. Lark's presentation as well, so it's a very touching ceremony. So I'd like to thank all the military veterans who are here. Thank you for your service to our country and to protect our freedoms. I would also like to thank and acknowledge all the staff here. I appreciate Ms. Gallagher's invitation and her coordination with Ms. Principal Hassan and her staff, and of course the musical choir that does a great job every year. This is a very special event because we honor those who have made the ultimate sacrifice while serving our nation. As we approach the start of this long weekend, I know we're all thinking about how nice it will be to have a few extra days off, a little more time to relax, maybe get some yard work done or spend time with friends. There's nothing wrong with enjoying our holidays. In fact, it's important for our own health to be able to unwind and slow down a bit. However, it's also important to make sure we don't forget the true meaning behind this very special holiday. Memorial Day didn't begin with any big fanfare or official declaration. It was started by people who would gather to place flowers on graves and honor those military personnel who died during the Civil War. They called it Decoration Day, and over time it kept growing and growing. After World War I, the holiday evolved to commemorate American military personnel who died in all wars, and then much later the day became known as what we know today, Memorial Day, and was moved to the last Monday in May. In November, we have a day to pay tribute and thank our veterans, those who have served in the armed forces. But on Memorial Day, we pause with reverence to honor those who gave their life while serving in the military. We owe it to those fallen heroes and their families to never forget the true meaning of Memorial Day. Many who died while serving in the armed forces were at the very start of their life, and I know we're going to learn this from Ms. Lark from Edsel Ford. They had plans, dreams, and hopes. They were looking forward to a future filled with friends and family. They were the next firemen, doctors, business owners, and of course, teachers. Like many of you, I too have had family members serve in the armed forces. My grandfather, who passed away 12 years ago, served in the U.S. Navy in World War II. I heard many stories from him, and he was very proud to serve his country. I'm fortunate. I was able to hear those stories firsthand directly from my grandfather. On Memorial Day, we must remember the families who were never able to hear those stories firsthand because their loved one was lost while serving the country. Let them know that their family member is appreciated and remembered. Let them know that the ultimate sacrifice, the price that was paid for our continued freedom, will not be forgotten. President Franklin Roosevelt said, "Those who have long enjoyed such privileges as we enjoy forget in time that men have died to win them." I would add men or women to this quote, of course. So this weekend, enjoy the days off, spend time with family and friends and family, maybe even grab a lawn chair and make your way to the big parade on Michigan Ave. But also always remember the true meaning of Memorial Day. Remember the mothers, daughters, sons, and fathers who served our country and gave their life defending our freedom. Thank you, and may God bless our fallen, our veterans, our active military, and this great nation. Appreciate it.
Thank you to Mr. Kelm and the choir for the beautiful rendition. We'd also like to welcome City Council member Ms. Leslie Herrick. And please help me welcome Dearborn Fire Chief Joseph Murray.
Thank you. Good morning. I bring you greetings from the United States' hardest working mayor, Abdullah Hammoud. Unfortunately, he's unable to make it today due to some conflicting appointments, but he wanted me to send his regards to everybody, so thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, students, teachers, Edsel 4 community, thank you for inviting me to speak at the Memorial Day ceremony today. Today we gather to honor the memory of those who have made the ultimate sacrifice in service to our nation. Memorial Day is a solemn reminder of courage, dedication, and selflessness demonstrated by our military service members. It's a time for us to reflect on the accomplishments and struggles of our servicemen and women and their families. We come together to remember those we have lost and to celebrate the human spirit that drives us to persevere despite the most trying obstacles. As we reflect on their sacrifices, we also consider the profound lessons their lives and actions impart on us. As we reflect on their sacrifices, we also consider the profound lessons their lives and actions impart on us. Dearborn Memorial Day commemorations play a pivotal role in the life of our city. Our parade is one of the largest in the country, draws hundreds of participants and spectators each year. I hope to see many of you at the parade on Monday. The dedication of our military community continues long in the life, one of the most significant lessons we can learn from our military heroes is the value of commitment. Service members take an oath to defend our country, fully understanding the gravity of their promise. This level of commitment teaches us that true dedication often requires personal sacrifice. Whether it's committing to our studies, our goals, or our relationships, we can draw inspiration from the unwavering resolve to fulfill their duty, even in the face of great adversity. As we commemorate Memorial Day, let us remember that the sacrifices of our military service members are not just historical facts, but living lessons. Their commitment, courage, teamwork, resilience, and selflessness provide a bright blueprint for us to lead a meaningful and impactful lives. By doing so, you honor the memory of those who have given everything for the freedoms we enjoy today. Thank you, and may we always remember the honor of our fallen heroes.
It is with great pleasure that I introduce to you Ms. Lisa Lark, who will lead us in the rose ceremony. Ms. Lark is an Edsel alumni and is the published author of the book entitled All They Left Behind, Legacies of Men and Women on the Wall. Please welcome Ms. Lisa Lark.
Good morning. When I first walked these halls more than 30 years ago, I don't remember ever noticing the plaque in the hallway. You probably don't either, or maybe you do today when there's flowers on a table in front of it. As you sit here today, it may seem strange to take all this time to sit quietly on this beautiful day, listening to a lady you don't know talk about a bunch of men who died before many of your parents were born. It is a bit strange at first. I began researching these men about 14 years ago. Since then, I've gotten to know them, and I hold them and the rest of Dearborn's 347 fallen heroes extremely close to my heart. These are my boys. Although their photos are in black and white, their lives were lived in full color. One of the things you'll hear me say a lot today is their friends remember. even after all these years, these 23 young men are alive in the minds of those who love them. As I share a bit of them with you today, I hope you can remember a piece or two about who they were. It's important that we remember them, as it keeps them alive. Dennis Charles Stancroft. Dennis was born on New Year's Eve, 1944. He lived on the corner of Columbia and Summer with his parents and 3 sisters. His friends described Dennis as athletic and strong-willed, and he could often be found playing football and basketball at a lot in the neighborhood. He was on the swim team while at Edsel and graduated in 1963. He joined the Marines shortly after his graduation, and in 1965, he had just bought a ring for his longtime girlfriend, Nanette. He planned to send her the ring, but he never had the chance. He was killed on Christmas Eve, 1965, becoming the first man from Dearborn to die in service in Vietnam. David Terwilliger. David was born in May of 1946 and grew up on Cleveland Street in the Monroe and Outer Drive area. He had 3 sisters and attended Whitmore Bowles, O.L. Smith, and Edsel. David is described as kind and gentle. He worked at a dry cleaner's while at Edsel. He wrestled and spent a lot of his free time drawing and designing cars. He enlisted in the Army, but planned on attending college when he returned home. He arrived in Vietnam in March of 1966 and was killed less than 2 months later at the age of 19. Rudolph Jackie Mack, Jr. Rudy Jackie Mack was born on August 1st, 1944. He and his 3 siblings grew up right near Whitmore Bowles. Rudy loved taking things apart and was very mechanical. Once he bought his own car, he spent many hours working on it. After graduating from Edsel, he worked as an apprentice rigger until he was drafted in 1965. He was sent to Vietnam in November of that year and served as a gunner on a medical evacuation helicopter. He had passed the halfway point of his time in Vietnam and was proud of his role helping evacuate wounded soldiers. On May 4th, 1966, Rudy and the rest of his crew were killed in a helicopter crash in South Vietnam. He was 21. Earl Smith. Earl was born in October of 1946 and lived on Danvers Lane in Springwells Park. He had 2 sisters, one of whom was his twin. Earl was a Boy Scout when he was younger and was a member of the Greenfield Congregational Church. Earl left Edsel during his junior year in 1964 and enlisted in the U.S. Army. He trained as a medic and was sent to Vietnam. He wrote home when he could, telling friends and family about the men he'd been able to help and the ones that he hadn't. After 6 months of combat duty, Earl was given the chance to be sent away from the fighting, but he refused. In his last letter home, he said he needed to stay where he could help people, because that was why he had joined in the first place. Earl was killed in June of 1966 near the Cambodian border while helping to evacuate a wounded soldier. He was 19. John Floyd Cochran was a member of the football and track teams while at Edsel. He was all-city football and graduated in 1959. John attended Taylor University in Indiana and worked for Camp Dearborn during the summers. He wanted to be a school counselor or social worker. John was very patriotic and enlisted in the Army in 1962. He served as an officer in a special intelligence unit and was loved and respected by the men he led. One called him the finest officer he'd ever known. John had recently married and was serving in Vietnam in late 1966 when he was struck by a sniper's bullet just days before he was scheduled to meet his new wife and his parents in Hawaii. He was 25 when he died. Bruce Meade Reynolds was born in 1946. While in school, he lived on Gertrude and had 2 brothers, Bud and Brian. He was married and had a son named Joey. Bruce enlisted in the Navy in 1963 and was trained as an air traffic controlman. He was home on leave in September of 1966 when he was killed in a car accident at the age of 19. Alan Kartunen was born in 1947 and lived on Alice Street. During his senior year at Edsel in 1965, Alan joined the Navy. While serving, his role was that of a fireman. He was stationed at Mayport, Florida on the USS Yellowstone in November of 1966 when he was killed in a car accident in Clearwater, Florida. He was 19 years old. George Siegwald II was called Butch by his family and grew up with his brother and sister on Cleveland Street. While at Edsel, Butch swam the backstroke on the swim team. He graduated in June of 1963 and enlisted in the Marine Corps that summer with his friend Dennis Stancroft. Butch had served in the Caribbean and the Panama Canal Zone and was stationed in North Carolina when he was killed in a car accident at the age of 21. Robert W. Yoakum, Jr. Robert Yoakum was born in March of 1946. He was called Chip by his family and friends. He had 3 sisters, and his friends remember him as being charming with a great personality. He had a lot of interests, including acting in school plays, playing goalie for the local Dearborn hockey team, and running track at Edsel. Chip enlisted in the Army in 1966 and was commissioned a lieutenant. In August of 1967, he had just received orders to go to Vietnam and was scheduled to return home for a visit with his family and his fiancée. Before heading back to Dearborn, Chip was seriously injured in a motorcycle accident, and he died 21 days later at the age of 21. Henry Fugate was born in 1948. After living in Detroit for most of his life, Henry and his family moved to Alice Street. He liked baseball, basketball, and football, and was a quiet, capable, and extremely likable young man. After graduating from Edsel in 1966, Henry worked at the Dundee Truck Line. He was drafted into the Army in 1966 and arrived in Vietnam on his birthday. Henry served as a member of a helicopter rescue team and was due to head out for a leave when he was killed by sniper fire. He was 19. William A. Schmaltz III was born in 1947. He graduated from Edsel in 1965 and enlisted in the Navy. He had recently returned from a tour in Vietnam on board the USS Forrestal. On November 25, 1967, William had spent time visiting his grandmother in northern Michigan and was killed in a car accident on the way home. He was 20. Randy Dillander grew up on Chestnut and belonged to the Dearborn First Methodist Church. His friends described him as a leader and remembered how he led a group of tough guys that hung out at Tenite Park. He was a hard worker, working part-time as a busboy while he was at Edsel. He loved nature and wanted to be a conservation officer. Randy joined the Army while still a student at Edsel and served as a scout dog handler. He also served on more than 25 aerial missions over hostile territory. On December 10, 1967, Randy was on patrol searching for enemy mines when a booby trap was triggered. He alerted his fellow soldiers, but remained calm while they got away safely. Randy was killed and received the Silver Star and the Bronze Star for his heroism. He was 19 years old. David Antall. David Antall was the oldest child and only son of Steve and Anna Antall. David was kind and good-natured. His friends say he was the class clown who loved making people laugh. He loved the outdoors, and when he wasn't at Pine Park with his friends, he could often be found hunting, fishing, and camping with his family. After graduating from Edsel, David attended Henry Ford Community College for a time and was eventually drafted in the Army. He was sent to Vietnam, where he served as a helicopter crewman. David was killed in a helicopter crash on December 20th, 1967, just 9 days before his 21st birthday. Douglas McElroy. Douglas McElroy was born in 1948 and grew up at 3851 Lincoln. Doug was an only child and played football and basketball well at Edsel, excelling at both. Doug joined the Army in July of 1967 with two of his high school friends, Michael Niezgoda and Chuck Hanselman. The three men trained together and arrived in Vietnam around the same time in Thanksgiving of 1967. The three made a pact to meet up in Dearborn for the 1968 holiday season, but Doug was killed less than a month later in January of 1968. He was 19 years old. Charles Hanselman. Before graduating from Edsel in 1967, Chuck Hanselman lettered in track. His friends remember him as a genuinely nice guy with a big heart. They said he was the epitome of cool, with a strong character and a low chuckling laugh. He loved Motown music and always stood up for what he believed in. Chuck joined the Army with his high school friends Doug McElroy and Mike Niezgoda. Chuck was killed in combat on January 10th, 1968, just one day after his friend Doug McElroy. He was just 19 when he died. Chuck and Mike's caskets would return home to Dearborn together. Jerry Wayne Clark was born in Detroit, one of 8 children. The family moved to 21745 Bailey Street, and Jerry would graduate from Edsel in 1964. He was a talented musician, playing the clarinet and teaching himself the drums. He and some friends had formed a band and were starting to get a few playing gigs. After completing a drafting degree from Henry Ford Community College, Jerry was drafted into the Army. He was killed by a small arms fire on May 7th, 1968. He was 22 years old when he died. Michael Niezgoda. Mike grew up on Olmsted. He had been a Cub Scout and played for the Dearborn VFW Engineers hockey team. He loved his car, a 1966 Mercury Comet Caliente. After graduating from Edsel, he joined the Army with Doug McElroy and Chuck Hanselman. Mike was the last of the 3 friends to give his life in Vietnam when he was killed in an ambush on September 24th, 1968, just days after his 20th birthday. Alan Hosnadel. Alan grew up on Olmsted and was a star swimmer while at Edsel before graduating in 1963. He was charming and very smart with a great smile. After graduation, Alan studied pre-med at Michigan State for 2 years. Alan's father became ill in 1965 with heart problems, and Alan returned to Dearborn to run the family's pork packing business. Shortly after leaving Michigan State in 1968, Alan was drafted into the Army. He was sent to Vietnam and killed on March 12, 1969, at the age of 23. His father would pass away just days after learning of Alan's death. Their obituaries ran side by side. David Allen Brown. David was the oldest of 3 boys, and his family grew up on Linden Street. He could often be found at the House School Park playing football and basketball with his friends. David loved animals and would frequently bring home stray dogs, even from the gas station that he worked at. David was drafted in 1968 and arrived in Vietnam in April of 1969. On June 8, 1969, David's position came under attack and he was killed. He was just 20 years old. Michael Zengowski graduated from Edsel in 1965. He loved photography and worked at an appliance store while attending Henry Ford Community College. Mike struggled with his health for much of his life, but still enlisted in the Army. He had a heart ailment which prevented him from serving in Vietnam, although he requested the assignment multiple times. He served in Korea and Japan and was eventually stationed in Texas. In August of 1969, Mike passed away while on leave in New Mexico. He was just 20 years old. Donald Rowley. Donald Rowley had 4 sisters, and the family lived on Edison Street. His friends remember him as a happy-go-lucky young man with a terrific smile and sense of humor. He was a kind young man that people counted on. After graduating from Edsel, he studied art at Central before returning home to Dearborn. He was working at a gas station when he was drafted in May of 1969 and was sent to Vietnam in April of 1970. While in Vietnam, Don realized that he did not believe in the war he was fighting, or in any war for that matter. He began the process of applying for conscientious objector status. He wrote several letters home to Dearborn to begin the process, including one to Mayor Orville Hubbard asking for assistance. The letter to Mayor Hubbard was dated June 23, 1970. Don was killed in a mortar attack that very same day. He was 21 years old. James Stubblefield. Born in 1947, James attended Oxford School and Smith Junior High before coming to Edsel. He graduated in 1966 and enlisted in the Air Force. James arrived in Vietnam in December of 1969 and was assigned to a munitions maintenance squadron of the 7th Air Force. He served in Vietnam for nearly a year and was coming to both the end of his tour and the end of his 4-year enlistment in the Air Force. On November 29, 1970, James was on board a plane in South Vietnam when the plane crashed into a mountainside. He was 23 years old. Edwin Byrd. Edwin was the son of Errol and Margaret Byrd and was one of 4 children. Eddie, as he was known to his family, attended Nowlin Elementary and Smith Junior High. During the summers, Eddie worked at Camp Dearborn. He left Edsel in 1961 after his 11th grade year and joined the Navy when he could not find work. While in the Navy, Eddie got his GED and began pursuing education in the printing trade. He loved being in the Navy and planned on making it a career. In 1972, he was stationed on the USS Spear in Virginia when he was killed in a car accident on his way to work. He was 28 years old and left behind a widow and 3 stepsons. I'd like to leave you today with the words of Anna Antal, the mother of Private First Class David Antal. When I first spoke to her in 2011, she cried and said, "I had no idea that anyone still remembered my son. Thank you so much for honoring him after all this time."
Taps will now be played to honor their sacrifices. Please remain standing. Guys, even if the bell rings, we're almost done, so just stay put, stay standing. We will now welcome the color guard to retire the flags. Okay, this now concludes our program. Thank you, everybody, for attending from both the school and our community. Please stay in place until the bell rings.
Thank you, everyone. The bell has rung, but we silenced them. So go to second hour. Thank you, everyone, for being here.